What's up guys? For today's video we've got something special to do. I never thought I'd be working on one of these, but you know, when one of your friends says they really want something custom on their car, we're gonna get it done. So for today's video we're gonna be installing some aftermarket RGB halos and Jeep Renegade. Stay tuned. Alright, so thank you for joining us today. It's going to be an exciting video. You might think that we know what we're doing, but matter of fact, we're just going as we go along. So you'll see all of the good and the bad, the ugly, and all that good stuff. So we've got Mr. Jimmy back here going to help us in the install. We got Casey. And then right back here, we've got the Renegade Wolf. No, that's wrong. What is it? Say it again. Rennie. Gypsy. Wolf. Rennie Gypsy Wolf. Yeah. So it's her car. Be sure to follow her on Instagram. Tell us if we did a good job or not. If we didn't, it's not my fault. But we're gonna try to finish. Well, yeah, it's Jimmy's fault.
It's always Jimmy's fault.
So we're gonna try to document the whole entire process so that if you run into anything like this, you can put it together and not go through the same trouble that we did. So we'll see what we got. All right, with us today we've got Casey gonna explain exactly what parts we're gonna need for this. So go ahead, Mr. Sir.
All right. Well, the first thing you're gonna need is if you're using a round JK style headlight like we're using, you're gonna need this nifty adapter kit from Valkyrie Offroad. What it does is it removes the projector housing that's already in the Renegade and replaces it with a housing or an adapter kit that's more accessible and allows you to mount the headlights in. Which brings us to the Xprite LED headlights with halos that we're going to be using for the install. Now the kit comes with all the hardware you need as well as instructions. Headlights, pretty self-explanatory. Most of the wiring diagram comes with it.
Does it come with the right tools?
You will need some tools, and with the mounting kit, the biggest thing you need is you're going to need a Torx 55, you're going to need a Torx 25, a 7mm socket, a Flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a molding tool preferably. As far as the lighting stuff, you'll need some basic wiring stuff like wire crimpers, some butt connectors, and some tape just to finish off your connections with however you're going to wire it.
And you've already pre-connected the end of the wires, correct?
They actually come pre-connected as a harness. All the wires are quick connect up until the point where you get to where you have to actually tie them into the wiring of the vehicle. And there are several ways to do that. That's going to be up to you to decide how you want it done. A lot of people tie the halos directly into the headlight harness since headlights are on all the time when the vehicle is on. But you can also run the halos to a switch, to any sort of way that you want to run them, and they're controlled by Bluetooth, so that's another reason you have to do some wiring there, is to get power to the Bluetooth module. But everything else is pretty much already done. You just have to hook it together and put it in the vehicle.
Gotcha. So alright, so like I said, we're gonna attempt to try this out. This is our first run trying to do this, so anything we run into we will definitely document so that you will not have to run into it yourself. So I guess let's get started.
Alright guys, so to start off with, we're going to need to pull the grill from the Renegade so that we can access the housing for the headlights so we can get the housing pulled out. The first thing you're going to want to do is along the top, there are 4 Torx bit screws, or bolts rather, in the top of the grill. Those take the T55 bit. We're going to pull those out. We're also going to pull these 2 plastic clips on either side that'll be around the headlight. Those have to come out as well. Also make sure you have your handy bowl or something that you can put your bolts and fasteners in so you don't lose them. And yeah, we're going to get that done real quick and then we'll be right back. Alright, so the next part requires you to get a little bit dirty. You're actually going to have to get down, and there's 4 Torx head bolts under the bottom bumper. JR's going to show you one on that side. They take a T25 bit, and you're going to need to remove these 4 as well. So we're going to go ahead and get that done. Okay, so another quick little correction on this Renegade compared to the instructions that came with the mounting kit. Probably a year model difference, no big deal. It was 1 extra Torx bolt in the bottom of the bumper, plastic, and there's also 2 small Phillips head screws, one on either end of the bumper, that also hold this up. So we're going to go ahead and take those Phillips head screws out. Like I said, it's probably just a year difference. They used 1 year model to develop the mounting kit, and this one's a newer model. No big deal, just go ahead and remove them as well, or follow the instructions, and as you go along, just determine if anything extra like this one is there.
What year model is this?
This is a 2017.
Okay.
But like I said, it's just...
Do the instructions say on them like what year model it's for?
The instructions don't, but looking at the year model, it looks to be an older model than this one.
So it's reused it.
Yeah, so they just reused the instructions for the mounting kit, which is no big deal, just a few extra fasteners. Just pay attention as you go along and make sure you try and look out for anything that may be different year model than what's in the instructions. It happens all the time with kits that are made for multi-years worth of vehicles. It's no big deal, just pay attention as you go along. So we're going to go ahead and get that done and be right back with you. Alright, so the next step is there's 2 Phillips head bolts on both sides of the car in the front fender liner here that go into the front bumper. So you're going to need to remove those. No big deal. A quick little tip.
Man, it's so dark. There we go.
Quick little tip. Instead of trying to use a full-fledged screwdriver, get you one of these little socket bits that also have a Phillips bit in it. Makes your life so much easier. You don't have to worry about turning the tire or any of that good stuff. You can just stick it right in there and pull it out. Alright, so the next part is going to be a little difficult compared to the rest of it. We're going to have to pull the fender flare itself to access the fasteners that hold this part of the bumper in. So the best thing to do is have a trim tool or a screwdriver with a rag. Really recommend getting trim tools. They're cheap on Amazon or Harbor Freight or anywhere really that sells automotive stuff. They'll save you so much hassle and worry in the long run. So without further ado, we're going to see about getting this fender flare off.
A little bit of force may be required if this is your first time.
Alright, so as you can notice, things took a kind of a turn from where I was a minute ago. No longer have a hat or a jacket. Basically what I had to do is I had to pull the inner fender liner out just a little bit so I could get behind the fender well and access these clips that hold the fender flare on. And what I had to do is I had to squeeze them from the back side with a pair of pliers while gently applying a little pressure here to get the fender flare to come out. As you can see, I managed to chip one of the clips. It'll still work. It's still in the correct shape to work. It just, you may want to pick up an extra box of clips if you've never done something like this before and are worried you're going to break them. They're not that expensive. You can get them at a hardware store or your dealership. So what we're going to have to do now is I'm going to have to do this again on the other side, and then we're going to have to come back and remove 2 Torx head screws and 2 7mm bolts to free the bumper from the car so we can pull the grill out and continue with the install.
Looking at you.
Alright guys, so next what you're going to do is if you pull the fender flare out a little bit, you can leave most of it still attached. I'll save you a lot of headache later as far as lining stuff back up. But right behind here there's 2 7mm bolts and 2 Torx bits, which appear to be a 27 or a 25. Give me just a second, I'll tell you which one it is. Okay, so those are going to be 25 Torx bits as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and remove both 7mm bolts and both Torx bit screws, and we're going to do that on both sides and be right back with you.
Alright, so update on our progress. We had to do a little bit of modification, a little bit of fighting with it, but if you see these tabs right here, they're just the regular old push in, just like any other of the new fangled cars with the plastic bumper. Basically what we had to do is, I believe, if I can, oh, that's just a tab, don't worry about that. If you can see in there, there's two little black tabs. Just push those down and then the rest of this should come pop out. What I did was I put my hand right behind here, used it as a wedge and just pushed it forward, and as it pushed forward, more tabs started popping off, and we did that on both sides. So now the whole bottom end of this is detached, and we just got to figure out how to get to these other two tabs.
There's two metal clips right here. I don't know if you can see where the screwdriver's touching down in there or not, but there's two metal tabs that connect to this black plastic framing.
So about like right here,
yeah,
and right here.
Well, actually it's one per side by the looks of it.
Okay.
We just needed to get it
here.
released,
okay,
so that we could pull this bumper out and go ahead and lift the old housings out to put the adapter kits in.
Okay. Alright, as you can see, we've gotten the whole front bumper off over here. It looks all naked and googly-eyed, but we got it. One thing to keep in mind, if you're ever working with these lights, you can either disconnect the connectors on and just pull up on this tab and unhook it, or you can take the whole bulb out, as you can see here. So these are halogen bulbs. The specific thing about these, you don't want to touch the bulb itself with your fingers, because the oils on your fingers will actually, I guess, react to what's on the bulb, and it will pop the bulb and you have to replace those. And those are a little pricey, not too bad, but still, don't do that. So we've got 1, 2, 3 holes now because we did that. Over here I just disconnected these two and took this out. But you've also got this clip over here with zip tied over here. We just cut through zip tie, and we'll probably re-put that back on when we get back to doing it. But yeah, that's about it. And you can see all the tabs and all that good stuff on the bumper. So now the fun part is going to be removing the lights and starting to work on that. So we'll be back in a minute. So while looking at this, the one thing I want to mention, again, I've never worked on these before. I didn't know this was a thing. But if you ever wanted to change out your bulbs, you don't have to take out like the whole housing or anything. All you have to do is just come back here, just a couple little Torx bolts right there, and it's a little hideaway door. You can replace the bulbs. I mean, that's easy. If you're a Camaro owner like I am, you know that's so much work to do just to change out some DRLs. So let's see what else we got to do to get this going.
Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on pulling the factory housing out. And to do that, we're going to simply pull the rubber cap off the rear of the headlight, reach in here, simple push down tab, as you can see there, and disconnect from the back of the bulb. Then also there, if you bring the camera over here, you might see it a little better. There's this black harness here, and what that does is that serves as a weather guard running the wiring housing up into up into the headlight. That is also just a simple push tab on the bottom, and that comes loose.
Then we just do the same thing on the other side.
Yep. Alright, so the next thing we're going to need to do is we have to save a piece of the old wiring harness from the factory housing. If you remember, we unplugged this piece here. The piece that stays in the housing just rotates 90 degrees and pushes forward. Then you can reach inside the housing and remove the connector. You're going to need to save that for future reference. And now all that's left to do is pull the factory housing out of the car. And to do that, there are 3 Torx head screws. One here, which is kind of a pain to get to. So I recommend taking the other 2 out first so you can wiggle it around and get a better angle. And one down here at the very bottom. Like I said, it's only 3 of them. Won't take that long to do. And we'll go ahead and get those knocked out.
What?
Oh yeah.
I do it up in case down in case I was like, if there's gonna be mud on the vehicle, it's gonna be all
Can we just
over
leave it like this? Can we do that?
Oh yeah.
Don't
Go
think
straight
that's
Baja
legal.
style with it.
As long as you're not
Is that
driving at
legal?
night.
No, it's not.
I mean, I've seen people in Henderson drive like that all the time. So.
Well, man, it's Henderson.
It looks cool though.
It does. Are you actually recording?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. Cool. Alright, so the next part is going to be actually putting our headlight into our adapter kit assembly. The kit itself comes pre-assembled to show you where everything goes. What you're going to need to do this is a 5/32 Allen wrench or Hex Key, whichever you prefer, name-wise. I'm using a pair of needle nose pliers to hold this inside lock nut. You can use another 7/16 wrench, but I prefer the pliers just because of how the angle is. And then you're going to need a socket, 7/16 socket and ratchet. So the first thing we're going to do is take this outer bezel ring off. That'll give us access to the ring that actually holds the headlight, so we can disassemble that and get the headlight in. So yeah, everybody, that's going to be my correction. The hex key is going to be used to adjust the headlight once we have it in. To actually mount the headlight in, it's just a small Phillips head screw, 3 of them around the headlight. So just keep that in mind. You'll still need the Allen wrench, just not quite as soon as what I'm trying to do. Save your 2 bolts that hold the bezel back on and the washers.
So what company did y'all use to get these parts?
We use Valkyrie Offroad for the adapter kit. They're one of the few companies that make an adapter kit that allow you to mount JK style headlights, 7-inch round headlights into a Jeep Renegade. They're a really good company. They're the manufacturers. I actually ordered them through one of their sub companies called Madness Auto Works. They're based out of California, and they did a really good job of making sure I got what I needed in a timely manner. The headlights themselves are Xprite headlights from Xprite USA. They're the LED 7-inch round Jeep headlight with color changing halos. Already come pre-wired, and the wiring harness itself is over there in the box because we're not quite ready for it. And this adapter kit also comes, the mounting hardware and everything also comes with the adapter kit. So you have everything you need to go ahead and install it, as long as you have the hand tools needed. So let me find a Phillips head screwdriver and we'll get this headlight in. Alright, so what we got going on now is I'm just finishing up putting the headlight into the actual mount. The screws are rather small and my fingers are rather large, so it presents some difficulty. But basically the headlight itself will have kind of these nodules on the back of it, as you can see there, and they will fit in pre-cut slots. Probably can't see it, but they will fit in actual pre-cut slots into the headlight ring. And they take some, see, there you go, and they'll take some finagling to get perfectly right. But once they sit in, the ring will sit over. You'll just tighten it down and you'll be good to go.
So I just want to say something real quick. You know, at first I didn't know. I was kind of skeptical about this light, about how it will look with such a big opening that it has. But after seeing the ring actually on it, it actually looks like it's going to look factory for when you put it in. So you don't have like big holes, big gaps or anything like that. So I can't wait to see this thing actually put in and working. Been out here for what, an hour or two now?
Yeah.
So with videoing while we're doing it, it's taking a little bit more time. For you, it may take like an hour or so to get to this point, but just time reference for anybody that's looking to see how long this is going to take to do it. So,
And it's a little hard to explain what I'm doing, and you know, us trying to figure out a few of the smaller minute details that aren't exactly the same from what the manufacturer used to develop the product. There's a few small differences there that we've had to kind of figure out as we went. So that adds a little time to it as well. But all facts considering that we've basically taken the entire front end off of this Jeep Renegade, for the time we put in it, it's not bad at all. So it may take a little time and a little effort on your end as far as learning and making sure everything is correct as you go, but that's normal in any project. So don't feel bad about that at all.
Yeah, so just make sure if you start any kind of project, no matter what it might be, if you start anything at all, give yourself enough time to get it done, because we definitely don't want to be stranded when we're working on our cars. Definitely don't want to be all in parts if we have to have it for the next day and we get tired. So just make sure to give yourself enough time to get it done. Get it done right, because you definitely want to go through it again. And yep, that's pretty much all the tips I got for you for right now. So we'll see if we can get this in and be right back.
And before we stop, that is the headlight in the ring that mounts it. So you get an idea of what we're going to be looking like when we get done. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're actually putting the bezel back on. And what that entails is just one bolt on one side and one bolt on the other. You can only go one way, so don't worry about messing it up. And the best thing to do is it has a little adjustment to it to make whatever headlight you're using centered. The best thing to do is kind of just eyeball it for the time being, tighten it up, get it straight, and when we get it in the actual Jeep, we can look at it from afar and make sure everything looks 100% centered and right. And that's pretty much it. Once you get it on, just tighten them up.
So you're basically using the plier to hold this bolt,
right,
while you take a ratchet and bolt and screw it down.
Correct. You can use a wrench or whatever. I just prefer the pliers just because of how tight a fit it is inside up against this bracket. The pliers slide in, you can hold it easy, but if you hit a thin wall wrench, something that wasn't as thick, you could easily get on it and hold it with that. Just working with the tools you have. Alright guys, so now that we've got the headlights and the adapter kits, the first thing we have to do is reconnect our wiring harness that we took out of the old headlight, and that'll just simply click back together like it came apart. And if you need to know how it goes back together, there's little tabs to line everything back up. Just push it till it clicks, give it a tug, make sure it's connected, and you're good to go. We'll tuck that off back to the side. Now what we're going to do is, using the supplied hardware that comes with our Valkyrie off-road adapter kit, we're going to go ahead and mount up our headlight. If you're working by yourself, this might be a good time to see if you can have a friend give you a hand, just simply until you get a bolt started. If not, just be very careful, make sure you keep a hand on the headlight at all times. Hate to see you drop your brand new headlights on the concrete and then splat. Also, in case you were looking at your kit and wondering what these aluminum spacers were for, when you set this headlight up in the slots, the way it's designed, this spacer is actually going to sit like so. It's going to sit between the adapter mount and this piece to take up the slack, since there's no longer a bolt in there. Go ahead and put that one in first. Hold that for me. Like I said, now's a good time to have a friend give you some assistance if you can.
Or possibly the owner of the vehicle.
In this case. And another little tip for everybody watching, the bolt that goes here, when we took it out, the actual head of the bolt that we had to actually tighten and loosen was close to this mechanism here. To make your life easier putting this kit in, to make everything more accessible, run the bolt the same way the old one came out, with the bolt head back. This will take out any extra space or length of the bolt that you have to mess with, and also make it easier to get a wrench or ratchet or whatever you're using to hold this in place while you're tightening it up, and make your life so much easier and save a bunch of scarred knuckles. And with that, it's mounted up. We just got to get it nice and tightened up.
How to give Casey a heart attack? Tell them they're on upside down.
Yeah, for real. So now that we've gotten them mounted up and bolted in, we stood back from a distance and kind of eyeballed them. Everything looks, for the most part, center. The only real way to tell is once everything is put back on and we can really do some fine tuning on the positioning. Next up is going to be putting the wiring on. So let me go grab that real quick. I'll be right back. So with the headlights from Xprite, they come with the anti-flicker module for the LEDs, since they are LED headlights.
Basically a resistor.
Correct. And they also come with a converter to make the plugs on the headlights match up with the plugs on the vehicle. So all you're going to do is simply just plug the connectors up. Actually, on this Renegade, I do not believe we're going to actually need the adapter.
And the great thing about connectors is if you get it in the wrong spot, all you have to do is unplug it and plug it in something else. You don't have to resolder, you don't have to do some weird wiring techniques that your Bubble Gump in your backyard did. Learn from the pros at the TheSinisterCamaro YouTube channel.
There we go.
I was been running.
So, with the Renegade, you don't actually need the converters to go from H13 to H4, I believe is what it is. Don't quote me on that, I'm probably wrong. Because these headlights are, like I said earlier, made for a Wrangler. With the Renegade, the harness plugs perfectly up to the anti-flicker module, so there's no need for the actual adapter piece in them. So we're going to go ahead and get both of them hooked up, and on this side I'll show you again. It's just as simple as taking your factory harness, which everything's plugged all up. You might have to wiggle it just a hair to get the prongs to line up just right. That's what I had to do on the other one. Once you get them just right, they'll go in and just click straight in. Before I get my wires crossed up. And the headlight will plug straight in as well. And you'll hear a click. Give it a tug. It's hooked up. I see what the problem is. Sometimes you'll run into something like this in shipping. If you look down in there, one of the prongs is slightly bent. No big deal. We'll just take a little screwdriver here, reach down in and gently pry it up to where it needs to be, so it lines up with the rest. And that was what was keeping our plug from plugging into our harness.
Just be careful, don't be moving it back and forth too much, or like any metal will do, it'll break off.
Correct. And see, once I got that pin back to where it needed to be, slid in, good audible click, good tug, it's good to go. And we're gonna leave this just folded up like this for the time being.
We got zip ties if we need them.
Yeah, we got zip ties. And once we get all the wiring done to the halos and everything like that, and get everything put back together, we'll just reach into the engine bay here, take some zip ties and zip tie all this loose wiring up, and put it in a place where it won't bind or get caught in anything like a belt or a fan, because that wouldn't be fun.
Moving parts, never a good idea.
Alright, so the next part we're going to be putting on is the actual controller for the halos. It's from Xprite. It comes with the QR code on the label. What you'll do with that is you'll just take your smartphone and scan it, and that'll download the app that allows you to control your halos from your smartphone or other device that's Bluetooth compatible. So here we have the quick connects that go to the halos that provide them the power. We also have the wiring harness for the controller itself. Black's obviously ground, red's going to be your power, and then the green and blue wires will run to the turn signal. Since she doesn't want her turn signals hooked up, we're going to leave these unplugged and give it a test run and make sure everything works fine without them being plugged up. If they need to be plugged up, we'll run them and wire them. But just her personal preference, since the Renegade turn signals are actually in the bumper itself instead of the headlight, she wants to leave them undone. Also, if you notice, the controller comes with 2 pre-drilled holes. The manufacturer just recommends zip tying them in a place that this stays dry and protected. So we're probably going to find a wiring harness that's in a clip somewhere on the side of the engine bay and just zip tie this to that harness so it stays nice and protected and out of the way.
And you definitely don't want to bang against anything either, because with any computer components, you don't want it to wiggle any components loose that you have soldered on the motherboard or circuitry.
And just to make attaching this simpler, I'm not going to put the control box in just yet. And if you notice, the halos just have a screw-on type connector, and inside each there's a little notch. It also arrows printed on the outside. You just line it up. These take a little finagling just because of the size of them. Once you get them lined up, they'll slide just like that together. You'll make sure your O-ring's seated, not damaged. That keeps the moisture out of the connection.
I like that. Usually wiring like this doesn't have that, but I like the screw over top of it.
Right. Yeah, like I said, just make sure your O-ring's not damaged in any way. That keeps the moisture out of the connection. And then you'll just bring the screw cap over. And finger tight's plenty tight. Don't need to overdo it. You overdo it, you can start twisting pins and wiring that's inside the connector and also damaging your O-ring. And you'll do the same on the other side. We'll just lay the control box there for the time being. But you're just going to take your connector again on this side, line the arrows up. That one's a little tight fit, which is good. That means the connection is going to be good and tight. Once again, check your O-ring, make sure nothing's damaged or cut, and then just screw your connector up. Finger tight is plenty good, no need to over tighten it. And this one doesn't want to seat quite correctly, which is fine. Just make sure your connection is good and tight. And then if the nut itself seems like it wants to sit off, just take it slow, tighten it slow till it gets finger tight, and just make sure everything's covered good by it. The purpose of that nut's one, to keep the connection together. The O-ring keeps all your moisture out. So as long as this is not coming apart, you're fine. Alright, so we've gotten the headlights hooked up. We don't have the halos wired up yet. That's going to be the next step. But we wanted to go ahead and test the headlights real quick, make sure everything worked right. We are going to throw right now a daytime running light code. That's simply because the bumper's still off and not everything's hooked up. And it's just going to throw a code into the dash that's saying daytime running light out. It's not going to throw a check engine light or nothing like that. Once you put the bumper back on and hook everything back up, it'll go away. No big deal. So let's get you some tests.
There we go. That was cool.
So what I've done is I just simply snipped the butt connector off. We're going to find us a power in this wiring harness to run the halos to. That way when the headlights are on, the halos are on. So I'm just going to skin this up real quick and we're going to see if we can't find us a power wire. And for safety's sake, please use wire strippers. I've been doing this a long time and found a pocket knife works for me. But to each his own, just be safe. And if you do use a pocket knife, use proper safety equipment.
Don't cut towards yourself.
Yep, exactly.
Like he just did.
Yep.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Correct. And just twist it up. And if one of y'all cut the headlights on, please. Alright, so what we're going to do for the halo module, we did a little testing off camera to find what wires what. So on this panel here, your yellow wire on this harness is your low beam power. Your black is your ground, and your red is your high beam power. What we're going to do, she wants her halos on when her headlights run, so we're going to tie them into the low beam power. That way whenever her lights are on, her halos are on. So to do that, I'm simply going to bring the wiring harness up, cut some of this insulation back, and then we're going to tie the wiring to the control module into the wiring harness for the lights. What you could do, if you wanted to have it where you could run your halos without your headlights on, is you could run to a switch inside the cab and run your power to some sort of power either in the fuse box or on the battery, or however you want to do it. I recommend a fuse. In case something went wrong, it will pop the fuse. But since the headlights are already fused, we're just going to go ahead and tie into that harness there. Once again, you're going to simply just trim up the installation or covering per se. And I will say a knife does work better for the coverings, just simply because you can control it a little bit better, and also the fact that most of your crimp tools, by the time you put enough pressure to cut it, you're going to be cutting into the wiring as well. Just be careful, take your time, make sure you don't nickel wire. As you see, as you get down lower, it turns to a gray color. That lets you know you're getting close. And a lot of times, once you trim it like that, you can grab it and take your fingers and go ahead and split this. If I can get it to work. My finger's a little cold. The temperature's going to drop a little bit. And there you go, the wiring harness is exposed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull our wire to the side that we want to use. What I'm going to do is actually cut this wire, skin it back, and use a butt connector and some tape to connect the wires. The butt connector gives you your wiring connection, and what the electrical tape does is it helps seal out any contaminants that might get into that connection, since we have cut back the cover. So I'm just going to snip it, and since we're also tying in the ground, I'm going to go ahead and snip the ground wire as well, and we'll trim these up and get them wired up. Alright, so what I did is, like I said, I cut the power wire to the low beams and used these kind of self-sealing connectors, and I ran the control module power wire for the halos into the harness with those. I also ran the ground to the control box module into the ground for the wiring harness, and I put these on. I'm going to get some electrical tape here in a second and kind of tie everything up, seal everything up with that to help keep some dirt and contaminants and moisture out of the harness. But other than that, the harness is now done, and we can just mount it up inside the hood and tie up all these loose wires and extra wire that we have, and
put everything back together.
Put everything back together, yeah. Like I said, if you're not comfortable with wiring, I don't recommend doing this. I recommend running it to a switch and finding a fused. But a little bit about me is I did do a stint as a diesel mechanic for a while for a tractor shop, so I'm pretty comfortable with wiring. But like I said, if you're not comfortable with it, I recommend finding somebody who is, or running your wiring through a switch for your halos. That way you're not cutting into a harness if you don't know what you're doing. So, alright, so what I've done is I've tied up all our loose wiring into one harness with some electrical tape.
And we rewrapped the wiring that we exposed as well.
Correct. That's there, you can kind of see that, but I've also gathered up all the extra wiring and just put a little wrap of electrical tape there to keep everything bundled up nice and neat and out of the way. And I've also mounted the control box with some zip ties to the actual mounts on the headlight, since we have so much extra room here. And what that'll do is, one, it'll get some air coming by the grill, keep the control box nice and cool, and it keeps everything tucked nice and out of the way. Just simply because of all the wiring that comes with this kit, we've had plenty of extra wiring that we've had to tie up, hence the bundle of wire here. It's no big deal, just tuck it out of the way so it doesn't get caught on anything or catch on anything that it doesn't need to. As long as you don't do too much crimping and bending on the wiring, you're fine. Everything's protected, everything's still sealed. And what I did is I just ran the wire that goes to the other halos with a little slack across the top of the radiator and over to the other harness, which I've tucked away by zip tying to another wiring harness that was already in place from factory. Just remember to leave some slack, body flex, whatever may have you. You don't want everything so tight that if the car flexes and the wire gets pulled on, it either breaks the wire or pulls apart or anything like that. So with that, we're going to start putting the face back together.
But before we do that, let's see a little comparison of what the old looked like. Yeah. Look how much bigger this thing is. All that room you just freed up. It's crazy. Thank you, Mr. Jimmy. Here we go. Everything's closed up. Put it back on. Actually doesn't look too half bad. I will say so myself. Look at that. Oh yeah. We got a light out over here. You didn't hook yours up. Why'd you do that? Casey, that you had one job. One.
Well,
Make sure your DRL. Oh, we can't.
Gotta take it all apart now and put it back in.
No, it's got a hatch in there. We can fix it. Alright, so with everything said and done, this is what it looks like. Now, don't worry about that bulb right there. It's out. We only got a little bit of battery life. Here is what it looks like. See all kinds of color, pattern, music, tape, all that stuff. So it's really cool system. And it even sits flush right here. Look at that. That's good. But that is basically how to install it. And we'll see some nighttime shots a little bit later in the video. And that'll be all. Thanks for joining us.